Hello guys and gals, and this is part 4 of our reading of Whodunit, You Decide, Mini Mysteries for You to Solve by Conrad and illustrated by Lucy Corvino. The illustrations are amazing, by the way. And as always, let's take a look here. This is the copyright information, all rights reserved. And we are going to be reading this case called Death and the Single Girl. Again, the illustrations here are beautiful. I don't know if she did the illustrations in the other book we read, the Little Giant Book of Whodunits, but it's amazing artwork. Paul Gruber had been living in Casanova Towers for about 2 years, and something always seemed to be going wrong. When he came home from work Tuesday evening, his new roommate was in the bathroom mopping up a puddle of water. "It started 15 minutes ago," Archie explained. "I pounded on the door of the apartment upstairs. No one's home, and the doorman's not answering the intercom." Paul looked up at the bathroom ceiling. Water was dripping between the seams of the cheap acoustic tiles. Ginger Mint's apartment. "Didn't she give you a key for emergencies?" Archie asked. "Yeah, I hope nothing's wrong." Paul and Archie walked up one flight. Paul knocked on the door, then finally flipped through the keys, finding the one labeled Ginger. Inside her place, it was dead quiet. Paul later told the police. Archie turned one way to the bathroom. I turned to the other, to the bedroom. Ginger's body was behind the bed, so it took me a little while to see it. I called out as soon as Archie came and saw the blood. He started to heave. He was heaving so hard he popped a button on his shirt. Archie wanted to look around for it, but I said no. On the way out of the apartment, I heard water running. I went to the bathroom and turned off the sink taps. I know I shouldn't have touched anything, but I didn't want the flooding to get worse. Ginger Mint had moved to town 6 months ago and became involved with Todd Iona, a movie projectionist. On the day of the murder, Ginger told a coworker that she was nervous. Her boyfriend was going to drop over this evening. She was hoping to end their tempestuous relationship once and for all, and wasn't sure how he would react. Todd Iona is sitting at the defense table as the prosecutor previews the case against him. Prosecution. We will introduce witnesses who will testify to Mr. Iona's jealous rages. Indeed, the victim told friends they were going to be meeting that night, and she was afraid. Iona arrived at Ginger's prepared for murder. It took him only a minute to do it, using a knife from the kitchen. We will show how, after brutally stabbing her to death, Iona set up the bathroom sink to overflow, knowing that this would cause the body to be discovered. And why did he want it discovered so quickly? Because at that particular moment, Todd Iona had an alibi. Mr. Iona, you see, was a projectionist in a movie theater only a few steps from Casanova Towers. Between changing reels, he had 20 minutes, plenty of time to sneak out and run through the apartment tower's rear entrance using the key Miss Mint had given him just a month before. Minutes later, he was back in the privacy of his booth, where he had another full hour before his break, all the time he needed to clean up and dispose of his bloody clothes. Defendant, sarcastic. What bloody clothes? Was any blood at all found in the projection booth or on my client? No, Miss Mint did not ask my client to her apartment that evening. Why would she? He was working. No one saw him leave the theater or enter Casanova Towers. And as for having access, so what? The doorman had keys to her apartment. So did the downstairs neighbor. All the prosecution has is the hearsay of a friend who said Miss Mint was meeting her boyfriend. Is that enough evidence to convict a man of murder? I think not. Trial witnesses and evidence. This murder can be solved with 2 clues. Officer on the scene of the bedroom. Officer. No liftable prints other than Miss Mint's were obtained from the bedroom. Did anything in the bedroom catch your attention? We discovered a white button on the rug between the body and the wall. This proved to be from Archie Gill's shirt. In addition, we found a torn photograph. It was hidden behind a framed picture of Miss Mint on the bureau. It showed Miss Mint presumably posing beside another person who had been torn out of the picture. We tried to trace it, but haven't had any luck. The partial photograph is admitted into evidence. It shows Ginger standing in the snow with a man's arm around her shoulders. In the background is a lighted Christmas tree. Prosecution witness Ginger's co-worker. I met Ginger when she moved here on April 6 months ago. She wasn't very talkative, but every now and then she'd mention Todd and how possessive he was. Defense cross-examination. Did Miss Mint say it was Mr. Iona who was coming over that night? Ginger's coworker. No, she said my boyfriend. She might have said ex-boyfriend once. I don't remember. So she could have been expecting someone other than Mr. Iona. I guess Ginger didn't talk a lot about her love life. Officer on scene. The bathroom. Officer. Prints matching the deceased were found all over the bathroom. Prints matching the accused were found on the counter and mirror. A different set of prints was lifted from the sink's faucet handles. Those were matched with those of Paul Gruber. A wad of toilet paper was stuffed into the sink's overflow drain, which forced the water to pour out onto the floor. If Mr. Iona had visited the deceased apartment within the past few days, wouldn't you expect to find his prints in the bathroom? Yes, I suppose so. Prosecution witness the doorman. Miss Mint came in at 6:15 p.m. She said she was expecting a guest within the hour. I know Mr. Iona. She didn't mention him by name. Did any guest arrive by the main door? No, and I was on the desk from 6:15 right up until 7:20. That's when Mr. Gruber called down and told me the police were coming. You were on the desk from 6:15 till 7:20? That's right. Mr. Gruber's roommate, Archie Gill, said he called the front desk about 7 o'clock and no one answered. Well, I was there. Maybe I stepped outside the front for a smoke or something. Prosecution witness, the maintenance man. Prosecution. Will you describe what you discovered in the garbage the morning after the murder? Well, something was clogging the garbage chute. I went up floor by floor and found the clog. It was between the 4th and 5th floors. Miss Mint lives on the 5th floor. Right. Anyways, I found 3 large towels, all sopping wet. That's what was blocking the chute. On top of the towels was a pair of gloves. This particular hall chute runs right between the murdered woman's apartment, so I knew better than to touch anything. The black leather gloves were admitted into evidence. They're men's large, the same worn by the accused. Okay, now, let's see. This was called Death and the Single Girl, I think. Death and the Single Girl. Deliberations. Here we are. The first thing the jury explains is the torn photo. That Christmas photo was obviously taken before Ginger moved to town last April. You and other jury members theorized that it was a picture of Ginger and her previous boyfriend, and that Ginger herself tore off the half that she no longer wanted. This leads to another theory, that it was Ginger's previous boyfriend, and not Todd, who was scheduled to meet her that night, on the night of the murder. You shift focus to Paul Gruber and the discrepancies in his story. For instance, Paul initially described Ginger's apartment as dead quiet, yet as he was leaving, Paul said he could hear running water and used that excuse to turn off the bathroom faucets. Most jury members have no idea what part the wet towels played, but the fact that they were found in the garbage with the gloves links them to the murder. Their location stuck between Paul's floor and Ginger's. Further implicates Paul or possibly Archie. Going in Paul's favor is the fact that Ginger told the doorman she was expecting a guest. Since Paul and Archie lived in the building, they would not have been admitted. They would not have to be admitted, that's right. And had the doorman really been on duty all evening or not, another discrepancy. Oh, and that's where it ends. Okay, let's see what the answer is. I'm kind of clueless on this one, so we're going to, no. Ah, here we go. Okay, I think I found it. Verdicts. Death of the single girl verdict. Since there's not enough evidence to convict, you and the jury quickly find Todd Iona not guilty. You, however, have an interesting idea about the wet towels and running water, and you report it to the district attorney. A week later, the local papers announced the arrest of Archie Gill. Following your lead, the police discovered that Archie and Ginger had been seriously involved and that Ginger moved to town to get away from him. A few months later, Archie followed and, unknown to Ginger, moved in directly below her. One day, he approached her in the park. Ginger was frightened, but agreed to a meeting at her place. It was during this confrontation that Archie knifed his ex-sweetheart to death. Only after Archie went downstairs to clean up did he notice the missing button, and then he recalled Ginger pulling at his shirt. Archie knew he had to return to the scene and account for the incriminating button. Before the police arrived, Paul had once mentioned having a key to Ginger's apartment. Somehow Archie had to get him to open the door. He did not call the doorman because he wasn't sure what the building protocol was. He might not have been allowed to accompany the doorman inside. Archie removed the cheap acoustic tile from the bathroom ceiling. Archie removed the cheap acoustic tile from the bathroom ceiling of his and Paul's apartment and placed 3 sopping wet towels on top of it. When Paul came home, the towels provided a realistic impression of a bathroom leak from the apartment upstairs. It didn't matter whether Ginger's sink was overflowing or not. The leak could just as easily have come from another source. But finding himself alone in the bathroom, Archie turned on the faucets and blocked the overflow drain. By the time Paul and Archie finished inspecting the body and Archie had played his pop-the-button charade, the flood had developed enough to be convincing. This has been a reading from Whodunits, You Decide. Mini Mysteries for You to Solve by Conrad and illustrated by Lucy Corvino. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.